Hi, I'm Nicole McGinnis, and I'm a mom. I have 4 kids, ranging from, I have 2 twin boys, they're 10, and then I have a 13-year-old daughter, Patience, and then, and the twins' names, Noah and Levi, and then I also have a 26-year-old daughter, Sheila, and they're all local. I mean, the 3 are still in my house, but one is in Valley Center, just down the road a little, actually.
And I'm Sharon Trok, and I have 4 kids, and they live actually all over the United States. So our oldest is 31, and he lives in Chicago. Our second son is 28, and he lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Our third son is 25, and he lives in Palo Alto, California. And our youngest is 22, and she lives in Bellingham, Washington. So, Nicole, it's crazy that we both have 4 kids.
It's insane.
and quite a age span for both of us.
How old is your oldest again?
My oldest is 31, and
then
my
your baby
youngest is 22.
Okay, 22. And then my oldest is 26, almost 27, and then 10. Okay. It's crazy.
It is. But, so what are some of the greatest joys of being a mom for you?
Oh, man. There's a lot. I think that a lot of the joys happen at different phases, but I remember when I was first a mom, I loved being needed, and that was a beautiful joy that I had never experienced, like that type of need that children have for their moms, and then another joy is as they grew, I loved their independence, like having a little bit more of that independence. And as I look at my oldest, I don't know if this is the same with you, but now that my oldest is an adult, I still feel like the joy that she needs me still is really precious. Like, I love that she was independent, but then she still calls me and is like, Mom, I need your advice, or what do you think I should do, or just telling me about her life. Something really beautiful about being needed from an adult.
I agree with you in that they start off and they're completely dependent on you. and it can be physically exhausting.
Yes.
Because, sometimes you don't get sleep, or they're all sick and you're just like running ragged.
Yeah.
And then it is a huge joy to see them reach those milestones where they're crawling and walking and, and going to school and all that. Yeah. And they start to become more and more, more and more independent. And then, like you said, as an adult, it's cool to see them. I think a lot of times kids as teenagers really are struggling for that independence, and really they need that. They need to feel that independence because they're doing things like going to college and stuff like that and learning how to be an adult. But it is really cool to see them as adults have that kind of interdependence that you talked about with Sheila, and how like when something happens in their life, how they call and share with you, and
I love it.
And it's really cool to see that you still have that relationship with your kids, even though they are grown up and they're adults. It's great to see them, reach out. Like the other day after dinner, we had like one phone call after another from our kids, and it was like. It was just, great to see how they're independent, but at the same time, they're still want to connect with you.
Yeah, they still need you.
They still need you.
They totally do. I used to think that when the twins would start sleeping in their own bed, that was going to be my dream, because we co-slept forever just because there was 2 of them. And then they finally moved to their own bedrooms, and life was wonderful. And now occasionally though they'll like sneak into the room because they have a nightmare. And I'm grateful for our big bed, because I'm always like, come on in, because I think back, even though they're always sleepless nights, I think there's going to be a moment where those are gone.
Right.
And so go ahead and need mommy, and dad right now, because it still is really precious. Yeah. But I will say that those also sometimes are the struggles.
Yeah.
Of like the lack of sleep.
Yes.
And especially for those younger ones, the lack of sleep and the constant neediness, and there's so many questions.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff to talk about all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was those struggles too?
I feel like, the joy, some of the biggest joys are like, just seeing them grow and develop into individual people that they become, and how each one is unique and very different.
Oh yeah.
But I would agree with you that some of the struggles are just the feeling of exhaustion that you feel like with, I remember, a couple times when everyone was sick, including me. And like, how do you as a mom take care of everyone who's sick?
You need your own lifeboat.
Yeah.
While you're trying to like save all of them.
Yeah. I remember, a couple nights when some of them had the croup. And the only way one of them could sleep, my daughter Lauren, the only way she could sleep was if I sat up and held her on the toilet with the shower going. And it was like, so I spent like a couple nights sitting on the toilet, holding my daughter, like the lid was closed, but like sitting on the toilet, holding her while the steam was going, just so she could breathe. And then another really funny time was all the kids ended up having the flu, and then I got it too. And so I got tired of getting up and just changing their sheets and their linens in the middle of the night, because I was also sick too.
Oh yeah.
So we just like laid out trash bags and beach towels on our bedroom floor, and everyone slept in our room, and it was just hysterical. Oh, yeah. Like, it was so funny.
But you did it. You have to.
Because it was just so much easier if we were all in the same room, and then I could just take the beach towel and...
I bet they loved it too,
It was actually kind of fun. We had our...
Like a sleepover.
Flu sleepover. But, some of those things are the struggles, but then also you look back and you laugh about, just the funny things that happened.
But the fear in those moments are pretty awful too. Like, when you were saying about the croup, it's like, I think that one of the biggest struggles for me is just the fear that the kids are okay, physically okay, when they're sick and you can't control it. It's a horrible feeling to feel powerless. And then emotionally, when they get bigger and they start dealing with big things, that's really hard, I mean, my boys are only 10, and so their biggest concern are friends.
Right.
But the preteen, or the teen, the teen in middle school and going to high school, those are going to be the boys and the girlfriends and the friends and all that social dynamic, And now my biggest one day marriage and career and life and health, Those are, to me, that's as a mom, that's really hard.
Those are big issues, and I think one of the things that's really been important for me as a mom is just kind of figuring out through the different stages of motherhood, trying to make time for prayer and make that a priority. Something that I really learned, like probably the most important lesson that I learned from my mom that's helped me as a mom has been just the importance of prayer. My mom was a prayer warrior, and she really taught me how to pray, because she prayed for my sister and I when we were growing up, and she prayed for our kids like nonstop. Just for her grandkids, she prayed for them all the time, and that's something that she really, really taught me. And prayer in my life has looked very different depending on the stages of our kids, because when they're little, it's hard to catch, it's hard to take a big chunk of time.
The attention span's so small.
So you pray when moments were available, and you make it work. And so, like we've, Bill and I have tried to make a habit of praying together throughout our marriage, and it's really been a huge thing for us, and it's really helped, as my kids have gotten older, because as they grow older, their problems get bigger.
For sure.
And so,
And then you've left them with that amazing foundation.
Yes.
Yeah. We pray a lot in our home too. At night, we all pray together. The twins and the husband and I pray. And then my husband and I go and pray with our daughter separately, because her prayers are a little different and they usually like a little bit more privacy. But I love hearing that foundation from you, because kind of reiterates that we're on the right path. Because that's the other fear is I hope I'm not messing them up. I hope I'm not messing them up. I hope I'm forging a relationship for them to model and mimic when they're older with God. I mean, that's That's heavy stuff.
It is. And I think too, like one of my favorite verses that I've just kind of held on to, throughout the lives of my kids is train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, and the way they should grow, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. And so I think that's just been, a promise that I've clung to and tried to hold on to is just realizing that, okay, God has entrusted these kids to us, and He made you the mom of your kids, and He made me the mom of my kids, and they're like truly a gift.
Absolutely.
That I cherish, and so you want to like do the right thing by them and train them the way they should go, and realize that they're all unique and all different, and so what maybe works for one doesn't always work for the rest of them, and so you have to kind of tailor how you
guide them,
and
instruct them, and like a job description list, it's if only we had a piece of paper for every kid when we had them that said their job description for that kid, because
yes, definitely.
When I had the twins, I thought, okay, I can do this just times 2. And then I realized, no, what this one needs is the complete opposite of what this one needs and wants. And so it's so true. They're such individuals, know.
Yeah, that is.
But it is really reassuring, you saying that God entrusted those children to us, and I think as moms, at least for me, I don't always give myself enough credit that, my kids are still alive, so it's a good sign, right?
It's a good sign, yes.
So I guess I'm doing okay, but I think that's really good to know too. God has our back, because He knows what's good for us and what's good for our kids.
Yeah. And I think too, like, just the whole, like, I really had to, it was a struggle to kind of come up with, okay, a way to weave prayer into my life in different stages of their lives, just because when they're little, you're so exhausted. And so you try to sit down and take time, and, you find yourself falling asleep or whatever. So what I found has worked for me is walk and pray. And so that's what Bill and I do right now. Is we get up early and we go for a walk every morning and we pray together.
Love that.
And that's I used to when they were little, I used to tutor a girl in math from the high school, so she'd come over every day after school, and I'd help her with her math homework, and then she babysat our kids while we would go on a walk. And so that worked for us. So we'd go on a walk and we'd pray. Yeah. So how has that worked for you?
My husband and I usually, our prayer time with our kids is our family prayer time, and so it's something that we all use to wrap up our day, and we all make sure we're holding hands, and we take a moment, we say, let's prepare our hearts, and so we'll all grab hands, and we just take, like, in that busy schedule, sometimes that is the only quiet that our family will experience. And so it's so funny, because once in a great while the kids will fall asleep while we're preparing our hearts to pray, but it's totally okay, and we just hold our hands, we say prepare our hearts, and then we have an order. So one twin always gets to start and the other twin always likes to finish. Aww. It's just the method, and if we mess it up, there's a lot more commotion that goes on. But usually one twin begins it, then it's mom, then it's dad, and then it's the other twin. And we always say, in Jesus' name, amen, together collectively. And I don't know why, it's just the most beautiful chorus when I hear it. And you can just feel the completeness in our family. And then with my daughter, our daughter, we go over there and we pray with her, and that one looks different every time. But I would argue that that's because, she's in middle school, and I think that that's what middle school looks like.
Yeah, definitely.
But sometimes they're really deep prayers, and sometimes they're surface, but I know that it's there. Those seeds are planted, And I'm so grateful, because I think about it as a parent, like, I always thought that it was my job to teach them all these things, but through so much of being a mom, like, I'm learning so much about God. The way that I love them and they, like, reciprocate that love to me. I mean, what better image of God, you know, and his promise.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at how much he loves us by the experience of being a mom.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you, because I feel like when becoming a mom really changed my whole view of God, just because it was like when you have these children, your love for them is something that you haven't experienced before, because you're taking care of them, like they're entrusted to you, you're taking care of them. And it kind of, I feel like it did deepen my relationship with the Lord, because I feel like I learned more about his incredible love for us. Like, you know, the love that I have for my kids is like a fraction of the love that God has for us. And I can't imagine how much it is, because I know how much I love my kids and how much you love your kids. It's like, you know, you can't.
It's unfathomable.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah. So the love that God has for us is even deeper than the love that we have for our children, because his love is perfect if he's God.
Yeah.
So that's really profound. I love how you talked about praying with your kids, and that, you know, we definitely had that stage when we were tucking the kids in every night. That was like our tradition, is we've always prayed with them. And but now at times it's good to, you know, like we were talking on the phone with our daughter the other night, and she'd been, you know, had a really rough day or a really rough weekend, and so we prayed together, Bill and Lauren and I, and it was really neat just how we could still do that, even though she lives in Washington. You know, how we could still do that and still have that, you know,
connection and time.
And that's just meaningful that we can still, you know, have that, even though they're not in the house anymore. I'm not tucking them in anymore, you know, but I totally agree with you how it's super important for this spiritual foundation, and you've been doing that with your kids, and we're doing that with our kids, and but, you know, just with praying with them and showing them the importance of our relationship with the Lord and trying to instill that in them is super important.
Absolutely. And I feel like Ridgeview has really helped my family, you know, all the way from the beginning, with all of my kids being part of Sunday school, and then watching them able to grow, and now patients can help at VBS. And next year my hope is that she'll be and currently in the middle school they have FCA, and at the high school there's other Christian clubs, and hopefully it'll go all the way until whenever, and maybe come back and lead in ministry, or just, you know, whatever that is, those beautiful seeds. It is so rewarding to have a place of community that fosters those when I can't, you know, because there's so many times where my children are going to need to be guided by others besides me, you know, and they listen better. I will say. I think that they listen better when it's not from me. And so I just think that's so important.
I would agree with that. It's really cool that we have, you know, other people that are part of, you know, that, you know, raising those kids and giving them that spiritual foundation. I know my kids really benefit when they were younger from Sunday school teachers that they had, and they really learned so much from them. And then, you know, it's been fun to teach your kids in Sunday school.
It's so special.
And see them at VBS and stuff, and just what an amazing opportunity that is for, you know, us to pour into the lives of other kids, and for our kids to get, you know, their lives, you know, impacted by other VBS leaders and things like that.
Absolutely. And I think next year my middle school will be at the high school, and I'm a leader at the high school FCA, and I'm so excited that I get to witness her, because she said that she has a desire to maybe also, you know, be part of the leadership. And I just think that, you know, those are the things that, you know, I will say, I think that you and Bill have established in our church, and then hopefully my husband and I established in our children, and then those beautiful seeds just continue to be planted. But I think it's so nice to have a community that continues to foster us and encourage us and water us at all the different times, you know, where we're feeling dry and withered, or when we're already feeling like we can help, you know, foster that in others. It's really important. What do you and Bill do to help that with your leadership as parents? Because I really love the way that you guys lead your children, but I mean, it's rough too.
Yeah. It's a lot of times it's really challenging to carve out time for, you and your husband. And I think that's something that's really important for kids to see, that mom and dad have a healthy relationship. And so I know that we've tried to make that a priority in our marriage and raising our kids, because we realize that, it's important for them to see mom and dad, caring for each other and loving each other. It's an excellent example for them, and I know you do the same with your husband. And it's hard.
It is, when there's all these little nuggets everywhere. And it always needs so much time, but it is hard. But we just had prom over the weekend, and we chaperoned, and we had a date, and we went to dinner, and it was just lovely to chat and to talk about the struggles that we're having, and to acknowledge also all the blessings that God has given us and will give us. But it's really good to hear that you guys make it a priority. It reminds me I need to continue to make it a priority, because as you said, like, our children are going to look to us as their leaders and guiders, in this life. Just like we look to God. And
eventually they do leave home. And so you want to make sure that you do have that relationship established with your husband. Because, I know a lot of times, I think culturally, a lot of times we hear that, as a mom, that you just, 24/7 nonstop, you're pouring into your kids. But at the same time, you also need to make sure that that you have that relationship with the Lord, that you have a firm, strong marriage, and that those are really important, because you're setting that example for your children.
Right.
And so it's when the kids were little, we tried to establish a date night once a week, and we would hire a babysitter and go out, or we would go have a babysitter come, and we'd go on a walk. Now we get up early every morning, we go on a walk, we spend time together, we pray. Doing all of those things, I think, really helps build that foundation. And it can be really crazy in the stage that you're in right now.
Just this past weekend, we had, multiple soccer practices and other family duties. And so my husband and I, while two of the kids were at a soccer practice, we went for a walk in a field, and it was lovely, and we just went for a walk, and then we rewarded ourselves with a burrito. I mean, it wasn't really about the exercise, it was really about that community that we were trying to reestablish, and you're right, it is so important, and then we're better parents because we have that time to touch base with each other, to kind of talk about God's goodness and the struggles that we're currently having, and just being really honest with each other, because just like he and I are trying to be honest with each other, we want our children to be honest with us, and we never want to lead in a hypocritical way. I think that he and I both said that we want our children to come to us vulnerable, so that we can love on them and minister to them just like God ministers to us when we come to him completely vulnerable. Hopefully we come to God in other times too, but those tend to resonate with me.
Speaking of just the whole idea of being vulnerable, and I think it's really important with your children too. When you make a mistake, when we make a mistake as parents, or we, letting them see, mommy made a mistake, I need to fix this, and letting them see us work through difficult things. I think that's really important for them to see that. And I think it's really important also for us as parents to to not control everything, but to, as our kids are getting older, we need to give them,
the freedom to fail,
and the freedom to fail.
You're right.
The freedom to, because through failure can come valuable experiences of learning through our mistakes, and we want them to be able to be comfortable to make those mistakes and realize that it's okay, that we still love them, and to help them deal with the aftermath or the consequences when they do make a mistake. I think that's really important.
I agree. I think that really helps to also drive home the need for repentance, and also the beauty of grace. You know what I mean? Just that honest vulnerability, the place of safety to make mistakes. I would say that was one of my fears and also one of my joys as a mother, is just letting my children make those mistakes, but then the joy of them realizing their strength in those, and then hopefully, recovering, and hopefully in a guided way. So I see that, and I can understand it.
And that, I think that's important, to just let them, have a safe place to and realize that, okay, I don't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. And so it's good to let them, do something and fail and realize, oh, okay, what do I need to do next time so that I can do better at this? And so I think that's a super important part of life, and just offering them that safe place, like you said, and showing them grace and mercy. I had like an instance, a couple of years ago, where a coworker was telling me about a time when her son made, didn't make it home right on time for curfew, but did everything in his power to try to make it home. And was riding his bike, had a flat tire, tried to fix it, was trying to get home, got home a couple minutes late. And how the mom was very harsh, and she was kind of bragging that, oh, this was, I had to, he was late. So this is his punishment.
Drew the line.
Really drew the line. This was his punishment. And I think a lot of times as moms, that hurt my heart a little bit, because it was like, okay, this kid was doing everything in his power to try to get home, and was very apologetic and very, so I think you have to we have to extend grace, and we have to give our kids that grace when it's needed, when they've given their best effort and they are repentant and they didn't do something or whatever, but saying, okay, this is what God does for us. And then kind of using that as a teaching moment and allowing them to see, okay, this is God's, even though you didn't quite follow the rule or whatever, you did everything in your power that you could to make that, make it home by curfew as a teenager, to accomplish that. And so, okay, let's talk about it. Let's dialogue about it. Okay. So, you tried, you did everything you could. We forgive you. Okay. And
then
talk through it
about maybe ways that we could prevent that if there's a possibility the next time. And I like that sometimes too. I will also ask my children for their grace, because I don't know if any other moms experience this, but sometimes my children have very high standards and expectations for me, and I'm going to fall short. Because as any parent, we're all very busy, and then if you are doing other things, it's very hard to accomplish everything, and no one is perfect. And so there's a lot of times where I'll go to my kids and be like, okay guys, I need your grace. I need your flexibility right now, because mom too needs a little bit of a break and a little understanding and a little grace. And so I think it's been really good for me as a parent to also learn that form of humility, because it just softens my heart, it softens their heart, and that way, in the next time they mess up, they don't forget that we all make mistakes. So as I was saying, Sharon, I just think that being a mom, I've learned so much about this concept of grace, and that I've asked it of my kids, and they've given it to me, but I've also given it back, and it's a new concept until I was a mom.
I think that's super important how we model that for our kids. I love that you brought that up, because it's really important for us to model for them Christ's love, and that's what we're doing when we extend grace to them, or even ask them to extend grace to us. It's just a beautiful thing, and I think it really helps them understand the love that God has for us.
Absolutely.
When it reminds me of my mom just passed away last year, and she she was a very person that extended a lot of grace to so many people, but to me as her daughter, definitely. And I just really felt that she kind of left this legacy of grace and faith. And but it's really it was very cool at the end of her life, the last year of her life, where she needed help, and she our roles kind of transitioned, okay, because she needed help physically, and she couldn't live on her own anymore, and so we had her move into our home and into our master bedroom, and she what was very meaningful for me was to be able to take care of her, and to have her live here and enjoy life, and see her. She was so grateful and just so full of grace through her entire illness and cancer and everything. She was just so grateful to be here and so happy, and it was nice, even though she was suffering and it wasn't easy for her. It was great to see just how grateful she was, and it was a pleasure for me to be able to take care of her.
And what a beautiful seed she planted in you all those years raising you, and then and then the gift that you could return it back to her.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that you got to experience that, because it sounds like she really knew what was going on, and she really appreciated the love. But she'd already planted it in you. So it was your turn to return it.
It was my turn to return, all those years that she took care of me and prayed for us and everything. She still, even
makes me so happy.
Even just throughout her whole, illness and everything, she still was, how can I pray for you? How can I pray for the kids? How can I, and then just extending that, showing grace to, and as I was taking care of her and doing things that,
that's
weren't
hard.
fun for her, she was still just very grateful and very,
and very
kind,
vulnerable
very
and
vulnerable.
accepting.
Yes. Yeah.
What a beautiful situation.
Yeah.
So a tragic situation.
Yeah. But it was very, I felt honored that I got to do that for her. And that's the way that, but kind of the circle of life and how it works is, eventually,
the rules
our
of
kids,
motherhood,
our kids may end up taking care of us at some point, and after we've spent so many years taking care of them.
Sharon, thank you for talking about your mom and that beautiful cycle of grace. That's life altering.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be as a mom to your children?
That's such a great question. I love how you talked about how you ask your children for grace.
Yeah.
And that, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's really a great thing to do, because then they see that, you're vulnerable and you're not perfect, and they realize that, okay, this is a safe place, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be perfect, and it's I think that's a beautiful thing. So I think for my kids, the legacy that I want to leave for my kids is just a legacy of love.
Yeah.
I want them, to know that I love them unconditionally, and legacy of grace and faith. Yeah. Knowing that faith in God is really important, and that it's important to extend grace to each other just like God extends to us. And then just the legacy of faith, just and trusting God and knowing that He that relationship with Him is so important.
Absolutely.
And then also just the relationship that you have with your spouse, your husband or wife, is super important too, because just modeling that love, for them, so that they can have a healthy marriage. Yeah. I think that's really I think those are all really important. I know it's not one thing.
No, I love it. I love it. I agree. I think those are beautiful legacies.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know about your children, I'm pretty sure they would feel that they've already know that, but hearing you put it into words, I think that's really important. And I love that you mentioned the fact that, you know, like, we do need our husbands, we do need our spouses, because it's a big job.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really nice when we don't have to do it all by ourselves. Even though I have to say, I think a lot of times I feel like I'm doing it all by myself. It's not because he's not there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just in our brains we're going, you know, and all these cute little people or big people are sitting there calling and depending on us. But that we're not alone. That we have these amazing spouses that are there, and we have this huge God that's just waiting for us to come to him and pray and say, hey, hey kids, I'm here, you know.
So Nicole, what legacy do you want to leave?
I mean, all
children?
of yours. You said it perfectly. I don't need to say anything else. No, I reiterate, I love what you said about love and leading by example. And I always feel really heavy in that word legacy, because I do think that as moms and as parents, we have such a big job, because we're not just preparing them for this life right now. You know, I want them to be happy. I want them to be content. I want all of their dreams to come true. I don't want them to ever hurt, but I also want to know that their foundation is in God, and that really, that, you know, their life here is set, but also their life in heaven is established and is a foundation forever. And that's a big job, but again, it's so nice that I'm not doing it by myself. Right. You know, I've got my spouse, I've got our church, I've got hopefully the people that my children have also placed around them, and you know, and it's nice to have such spiritual friends and spiritual family that help raise my kids, you know, and when I'm gone, they'll have their church that I hope also continues to build and water their seeds, you know. So I just want my legacy to be seen after I'm gone in heaven, you know. I want them to come back and say, hey Mom, you did good.
Yeah. That's super important. And I mean, just to kind of to wrap it up, I just feel like what you are saying is, we're not just preparing them for the life that God has for them here on earth, but also for their eternity. And that's the most important thing. So, thank you.
Thank you.